What is visual literacy and why is it important today? Presented by Agnes Roselli. Visual literacy has been around since the caveman started drawing petroglyphs, thus starting the visual imprint of the world. Visual literacy has been emerging ever since. The medieval times, visual images were used to place strong importance on the ordering of information and visual images. The Enlightenment era introduced mass training for understanding text and visual imagery. By the early 1900s, the use of visual tools had formally entered the educational system worldwide. John Lubeck pioneered this reform, seeing that visual tools were needed in the public schools. By 1969, a fellow named John Davies coined the phrase visual literacy. He stated that visual images do more than just make presentations and books more interesting. They have purpose, they send messages, communicate ideas, and therefore should be taught to be read. Visual literacy is the process of understanding images and is hard to define. Many scholars have varying definitions. Some argue that it is a learned skill which allows one to interpret visual images, while others define it as using one's past visual experiences to make connections for processing new ones. Visual literacy has one's ability to take information and transform it into visual images, including pictures, videos, graphs, charts, and advertisements, all of which help process ideas because pictures can be read and therefore their messages can be communicated. A visual literate person is one who can interpret and analyze the meaning of this bombardment of syntax while grasping the synergy and impact the message is sending. Visual syntax includes the use of scale, line, dimensions, meta symbolism, and editing perspectives. The complete literate person seeks answers for the semantics of an image and asking these questions. What was the purpose to create the image? Why does this image say about society? What aspects of the culture are being communicated and what has been omitted? Visual literacy is important to teach in today's educational system because it is the way people gather and process information. It is more important than ever to have these literacy skills. Every person in every society today is on optical overload and needs to be able to sort out these messages and interpret them quickly. Visual literacy can only be explained when it takes in all of these definitions because we start processing images and their meanings as soon as we are able to see. As we grow, we change our perceptions and build deeper connections of their meanings, but all definitions, visual literacy. The information age has long been emerging, and the use of non-printed material has become one of very important way to process and communicate information rapidly. People in all society will analyze, decode, organize, evaluate images quicker than ever before. The speed and critical thinking skills needed to compete in this age will be greatly enhanced by the learning of and development of these visual literacy skills. Society makes and sets trends all the time. The emerging trend is predominantly a visual one, which is increased by the increased time youth spends playing video games, watching TV, and YouTube. To answer the demands of the trends, some standards were needed to be in place. These standards are stated that the visual learner should be able to find and use images efficiently and ethically, define, interpret, analyze, and evaluate images, and finally create visual media. The organization who set these standards is the Association of College and Research Libraries, which is known as ACRL. The other organization which is closely related to visual literacy is the Visual Resource Association, also known as the RVA. These organizations promote that learners need to be able to determine the reliability of the source of an image and should know how to cite the images into research papers while identifying and understanding the historical and intellectual properties of an image. There are three main parts of visual literacy. These three parts are visual thinking, visual learning, and visual communication. Visual thinking is the process of the brain that allows humans to take information and transform it into the creation of charts, graphs, artworks, videos, and other forms of media. These visual stimuli help communicate the ideas being portrayed, making visual communications the second part of becoming visual literate. These visuals allow others to process the presented information quickly and help teach information and new ideas more easily. The third part of visual learning, which engages the viewer, is the process of information being presented and learning information from the image or visual, which is known as visual learning. All three of these parts of visual literacy will be necessary to continue for lifelong learning. The 21st century learners are visually wired. Visual literacy skills use 30% of the brain and are an intuitive process. Research shows that learners retain 20 to 30% of information with visual stimulation. That percent drops to only 10% information is only presented written form. The trend has been in the forefront since the 1980s and has an impact in all disciplines. This has happened because there are so many different types of visual media used today, putting more importance on the learners and teachers become visual literate. As Aristotle once said, without images, thinking would be impossible.